Before we begin this Sunday address, I wanted to give a little programming note. This channel will be taking a brief hiatus for about the next 5 days, with videos resuming posting on next Sunday. That said, let's jump right into today's Sunday address. Well, who could have possibly seen this one coming? Except we did see this one coming. At the same time that I was posting what would be the morning briefing, Kevin Durant was getting the hell out of Dodge. But the white media's been heavy on the damage control. They've just been going all crazy with it. I mean, you hear this crap?
There are people today saying this is the greatest failure in the history of not just the NBA, but maybe sports as we know them. What do we say about that today?
I mean, essentially, they're in the worst place than where they were pre-Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden.
And a month ago, this team was 18-2 in 20 games. And at the end of the day, Kyrie Irving fooled all of us here, right? He fooled all of us that we all believed that this Brooklyn team could win a championship or compete for a championship when he asked to be traded. And now it set the wheels in motion for him to be traded and now for Kevin Durant to be traded last night. And if it wasn't last night, Greeny, it was going to be in June. And Brooklyn eventually just ripped the Band-Aid off and moved forward here.
Kyrie Irving didn't fool anyone. He is exactly who and what he's always been, one of the greatest ball players alive, with unbelievable work ethic and skill. Whether you agree with the man on his personal views or not, you know that his words and his deeds occupy the same space. It's all of these racist white media sports reporters who were trying to fool people, but no one was deceived. They can't stop Kyrie Irving from winning, which means they can't stop people from seeing him for the winner that he is. So instead, they're trying to have a consolation prize, just sulking and whining to one another to make up for how humiliated they are right now. The humiliation that Kyrie Irving put on them. All this copium that you're seeing from the white media, it's just damage control. In 24 hours, all the lies they told about Kyrie Irving were utterly destroyed. And now Joe Tsai is a cautionary tale.
And right here, the mismanagement of personalities ultimately falls on the players, but more so on Sean Marks and Joe Tsai, ultimately on where this organization is today.
Why?
Because it's your job to manage the personalities. It's your job.
Are these personalities manageable? Kyrie just decided if they weren't going to give him his long-term contract, he wanted out, and then Kevin Durant decided he wanted out, and they just acquiesced.
Hey, it's a tough job, but this is why the guys get paid the big bucks. I think any organization would give that. They would do it again if they could.
He did white power's bidding, and now he's gone from having a billion-dollar franchise a few weeks ago to now having a team that ain't worth spit. The white media put him up to attacking Kyrie Irving, but it wasn't a hard sell because Tsai is a racist punk. He's living proof that some of the worst anti-black racists are not white at all. Joe Tsai, as many people of his ilk, think that it's his turn to abuse black people because that's how you validate your place in American society. And instead, Kyrie Irving wrecked him, and Kevin Durant administered the coup de grace. Now, notice what these white commentators at ESPN are trying to say. They're trying to be as careful as they can not to mention Joe Tsai by name too much because his failure is ultimately theirs. So to call him out for this catastrophe means they have to take this huge L too because they were the ones who encouraged and praised him for destroying the franchise that he'd bought. But listen what they said, that Kyrie told Joe Tsai he was leaving and forced to trade, and the same with Kevin Durant. Forced. That's what these same racist white media sports reporters are saying now, that Kyrie Irving forced Tsai to make a trade. They admitted exactly what I told you a few days ago, that Kyrie Irving told Tsai that he's going to trade him. So Kyrie punked Joe Tsai in his own company. Tsai had no power in a franchise that he's supposed to be running. The white media's admitting it. Sure, they're trying to put a spin on it that these athletes have too much power. That's the spin they're trying to put on it. It's exactly what I told you. That's what I said they were going to do after Kevin Durant left. They'd start pushing the old, arrogant black athlete line. Look at these black athletes. They're just so arrogant. They're bullying these franchise owners. Black men don't decide who gets paid what in the NBA. Black men don't decide who gets on the team. I told you about how James Harden left the Nets in large part because Coach Steve Nash was a train wreck. But Nash wasn't removed. And why was that? It wasn't because of those black athletes. It was because of Joe Tsai. And the white media is still trying to do everything they can to tiptoe around Kevin Durant. See, they spent so much time doing nothing but demonizing Kyrie Irving. Now that Kevin Durant followed him out the door the very next day, they didn't have a chance to set the stage to demonize Kevin Durant too. So this just completely blindsided them. They didn't have that narrative set up. They hadn't laid the groundwork for it. So they're saying that the Nets in general are in chaos. Well, just their organization. Their organization is just in shambles. They're just nothing but chaos over there. They use euphemisms like management is to blame. They're terrified to say Joe Tsai because he did their dirt for them. When the white media pushed the lie that Kyrie Irving was some sort of closet anti-Semite and that he needed to be buck-broken, Joe Tsai was only too eager to go along with it. He was determined to try to make Kyrie publicly grovel and beg and demean the man and try to chastise him like a child, which is what racists like Ari Emanuel wanted to see. But Kyrie Irving didn't bend and didn't break. Joe Tsai, however, is the one being broken. He's gone from having a billion-dollar franchise to having garbage. Even Kanye West didn't have it that bad. And it's the very NBA players who he attacked who are breaking him. Now, admittedly, I didn't know that Kevin Durant was already being traded at the very moment that I was posting Thursday's Moment of Truth, but it just goes to show Joe Tsai's asinine, pathetic management was self-destructing faster than even I could keep up with. I mean, the handwriting was on the wall, it was also on the floor and the ceiling that Kevin Durant would be leaving. But that he did it just a day after Kyrie Irving shows what an utter and complete failure Joe Tsai is. I'm telling you all this because you need to understand, this is what the white media is not going to say to you. These racist white sports media outlets, these guys, they never call out these team owners. Because these team owners pretty much have everything to do with these white media outlets as it is. The racism of a Jerry Jones or a Joe Tsai directly mirrors the racism of a Colin Cowherd or of a Stephen A. Smith or of a Mad Dog Russo, etc. Brooklyn had all the pieces they needed to be great. They were on a championship roll because of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. The players were performing at the highest levels. Everybody was looking and going, oh man, these guys, see, they've knuckled under. All Joe Tsai had to do was to get on Kyrie Irving's case, and the rest of these Negroes, they got right in line. Nobody in the white media was doing all of this coping back then, just a few weeks ago. So if the players were doing all this winning, why would they want to leave? It's because of management. It's because of Joe Tsai. That's who it is. But the white media is terrified to talk about that. They don't want to blame Joe Tsai if they can avoid it. Team owners were the ones who have these white media racist outlets on strings. The ESPNs and other white sports outlets are as racist as the team owners. I told you the other day that these white media sports reporters are the untalented, unaccomplished washouts who couldn't hang with the black athletes in school or college, and so most of these jealous, racist nobodies realize the closest they would ever get to pro sports is covering the black athletes who they could never be. So since that's as close as they could get, they decide to, as the old saying goes, whip their butts with a pen. That's why since the days of Jack Johnson, racist white reporters have made sports media into just another soapbox to attack the black community by proxy. Every racist trope, every vile stereotype, every anti-black smear, they just claim that they're talking about the athlete. We're just talking about so-and-so. And they think that's going to be enough camouflage. That's going to give them enough cover. Of course, white athletes certainly never get criticized, and definitely not to the extent that they were going after Kyrie Irving. I mean, I showed you the doggone audio from the last video I did about this. These guys were just making it a one big pile-on. You've never seen them do that with a white athlete or a white sports personality, team owner, coach, or anybody like that. It doesn't matter if Ben Roethlisberger was accused of sexual assault. It doesn't matter that Dana White got caught beating his wife in public, or that Brett Favre committed fraud to the tune of millions of dollars that he took from the poorest people in Mississippi. You have never seen the white media do a pile-on attack like the one they did against Kyrie Irving the other day, where they're just sitting here blatantly doing nothing but going with open insults against the man. They're not even criticizing him. This is just, we're going to be throwing all the insults we can at him. The collapse of the Brooklyn Nets is indeed the greatest failure in the history of sports, but it's a failure of management, and one that was completely and thoroughly avoidable. Joe Tsai chose to commit career suicide. He had players who were on a championship roll, so you can't claim that they didn't have the victories. Now, why would two of the top players in the league, at the very moment that they are clearly on a championship run, well on their way to turning their team into a number one seed, why would they then demand that moment to say, we want out of here? Why walk away from what was clearly going to be a championship run, if not a championship period? Because of the management, because of Joe Tsai. That's the failure. Joe Tsai is who failed here. The team was making a statement by winning all those games and then overnight bullying that punk Tsai into letting them go. They showed that they could make a team into championship contenders and then walk away. So clearly something mattered a lot more to them than just a ring. That's what the punks at ESPN mean when they say Kyrie fooled us. Yeah, you thought you had him under your thumb and he fooled you. They thought he was going to take their abuse and then bring them a championship, and he fooled them. He got their hopes up. He showed them win after win after win. The white media narrative about Brooklyn totally changed. Joe Tsai was sitting there smiling, thinking that championship was so close he could taste it. And then these black men smashed Joe Tsai and the white media's hopes and destroyed the franchise owner who had disrespected them. The white media obviously won't take any responsibility for what they set in motion, but they're also trapped. With a disaster this huge, they have to blame someone, but the problem is they spent so much time demonizing Kyrie Irving that when Kevin left the next day, it totally destroyed that narrative. So what are they going to do now? They can't blame Kyrie and Kevin because they're both gone, and they have to be careful about blaming Joe Tsai because the white media were the ones who made him think he could get away with attacking black athletes. Tsai was in the white media bubble, and he thought he had all this broad-based support from the public when all he actually had was just the same old irrelevant white racist reporters. Just because Ari Emanuel has a newspaper print 250,000 copies of his racist lies doesn't mean that 250,000 people believe it. It doesn't reflect the opinion of 250,000 people. It only reflects the racist delusions of one Ari Emanuel. But that's what they think. They think because everyone sees the lies that they tell, that means everyone believes them too, and they're finding out that isn't true at all. This is the greatest failure in the history of sports, but it's not an athletic failure, it's a management failure. Joe Tsai sabotaged himself by attacking an innocent black athlete and attempting to try to humiliate or otherwise chastise him publicly. It just didn't fail. It utterly backfired and destroyed Joe Tsai and his entire organization. Everyone sees that, and the white media is desperately trying to put a spin on it. All of this damage control. Idiots like Mad Dog Russo and Stephen A. Smith talking about
Kyrie Irving was poison in Philadelphia. He was poison in New York. He was poison in Boston. He's going to be poison in Dallas.
Really? That's what they were saying? But of course, a couple of days later, the white media was forced to have to change their tune on that one.
Extension talks during the season. It's kind of for Kyrie, it's a no-pressure situation because one thing that was made very clear after this last trade request, there is absolutely still a market for Kyrie Irving. Sure. You know, this isn't like when he was suspended early in the season. It's like, hey, boys, Kyrie's career in jeopardy? No. Kyrie Irving will get max contract money this summer.
Yeah, they know what they were saying were just nothing but lies. Right now, Joe Tsai looks stupid, and the white media looks stupid and impotent. If they can't intimidate black athletes through defamation and character assassination, then how do they keep them in line? All the lies, all the failed attempts at spin. The white media is furious because they thought Kyrie would be just another victim of white media racism, that they had him boxed in, but they found out too late he was holding all the cards. The white media claimed Kyrie had them fooled. No, he didn't. What happened is the white media played themselves. This is what happens when the white media tells themselves that they control reality because they can carpet bomb the public with their lies. When you have a white media environment where one group has a near total monopoly, they can convince themselves that their lies are reality because nobody has a platform large enough to contradict them, not with a voice loud enough to be heard. They make these media bubbles and try to trap the society inside of them. And if you're the white media, that's fine, so long as you never forget that these are just bubbles, they're not real, and like all bubbles, it doesn't take much to pop it. The white sports media promotes a plantation paradigm of sports where non-black men run the place and the black men have no power at all. They demonize Kyrie, and now that he's turned the tables on them, they're trying to do damage control. The lesson here is, if you disrespect black athletes, they will destroy your franchise and leave you with nothing. So the white media can go ahead and continue trying to do the damage control. I guess they figure if they don't mention Joe Tsai's name, nobody will think about him. Oh, these black athletes, they have too much influence, they have too much control, they got too much power. That's the lie they're going to try to hide behind. Now, when Joe Tsai was attacking Kyrie Irving, nobody was saying that, well, Kyrie Irving, he's got so much control, he's got so much power. They weren't saying that at all. It's a lie. These white media outlets know it's a lie, but what else have they got? Every good thing that had been happening with the Brooklyn Nets for the last couple of months was solely because of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. And every bad decision that came under the Nets since Joe Tsai became team owner is all because of him. And now Joe Tsai and the white media see what happens when black athletes have had enough. I don't require the white media to admit the truth because they can't. If they told the truth, they wouldn't be the white media, now would they? The lesson to learn from all this is that it doesn't matter what the white media says. What matters is what black people do. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Dark and Lovely, Wesley Monroe, Eric Croxton, Frederica Moore, and Robert Johnson. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.